In today's episode, we're diving into the mailbag to answer questions from listeners just like you. Questions about retiring prior to the age of qualifying for Medicare. Questions around gifting to your kids and grandkids and having IRAs in multiple locations. And then wrapping up with a question about long-term care. Stick around, we've got a lot of great information coming your way.
Welcome to the Your Life, Your Money podcast with Scott Searins, teaching you how to thrive in life, wealth, and retirement.
Welcome to another episode of the Your Life, Your Money podcast. I'm your host, Scott Searins, and in today's show, we're going to dive into the listener mailbag, where listeners just like you have submitted questions. We're going to dive into those questions, give our thoughts, strategies. Stick around. You might find yourself in a similar situation, a great time to learn from others, learn together, and it might be strategies that you can implement in your financial picture to help you build wealth or reduce your long-term tax picture, or just make sure that you're ready for retirement. Before we dive into that, I hope that you're finding this podcast to be of value and benefit. And if so, and you'd like additional information to continue to help you towards those goals of building wealth, helping you towards that goal of reducing your long-term tax picture, subscribe to our weekly newsletter. You can subscribe at lifemoneyshow.com. Again, that's lifemoneyshow.com. Scroll down to where it says Join My Insiders List, and you'll get weekly financial tips, retirement tips. And as you know, I'm constantly talking about tax reduction strategies, helping to keep more of your money in your pocket versus giving it to the IRS. So go to lifemoneyshow.com, subscribe to our weekly newsletter, and you'll be on the list to get our weekly emails. All right. Well, before we dive into the 4 listener questions that we have today, there was an article I was reading that had a really interesting statistic to it, and I wanted to share it today. Now, I'll link to this article in the show notes. You can always get those show notes at lifemoneyshow.com. And the title of the article was, Here's Why You Should Plan Like You're Retiring Early, Even If You Aren't Going to. Now, this article, again, was USA Today where I got it, but it looks like it was here or presented by the Motley Fool. Here's the statistic. It says, what has happened, or actually I'm going to back up here. It says, you may have every intention of working well into your late 60s or 70s, but you may end up having to retire early if health issues prevent you from working. And it says that's precisely what has happened to 53% of early retirees in a recent survey by Clever Real Estate. Now, we don't know how many people they surveyed, and it could have just been 100. We're not certain. But, I mean, look at that statistic there. 53% of people have kind of been, I'll call it, forced into early retirement because of health issues. And I'm sure that if you think about your family or your friends, and I can even think about different clients who have been forced into early retirement because of health issues. So the point here of the article is plan like you're going to have to retire early. Plan like you're going to have to retire in your 60s, or your early 60s. I'm so sorry, not late 60s, in your early 60s or your late 50s. And it's kind of like that old saying, right? If we plan for the worst, we can hopefully then live the best. And what it's talking about is just not waiting until your early 60s before you're making all of those catch-up contributions to your 401ks. If you're in your early 50s, start now. Make those catch-up contributions. Build up that 401k. Or if you're in your 40s or 30s, do as much as you can early on, so that way you're never forced to do something based on a health issue, or if you are, you're comfortable taking that next step because you've got the money saved up. I find with a lot of clients that I work with that they've saved up a healthy amount, in the event when that does happen, or just when they do decide to retire, if they're even looking to retire early, right? They're now able to do that with comfort. It helps them do that with comfort and confidence. They put away and they put aside that money that has gotten them to that stage of being able to make that transition on their timeline, not on some other timeline. So good article. I'll link to it in the show notes just to get you thinking a little bit differently for those of you that are still saving up for retirement. Hopefully it's a hopeful article for you to read. Okay, let's dive into our listener questions. Listener question number 1. We've got 4 on the dock today, and I think they're going to be very helpful for you. We've got questions about retiring early. We've got questions about doing some, I'll say, legacy, gifting to children or grandchildren. We've got questions about multiple IRAs and nursing home care, nursing home costs. So this first one kind of goes right with, plan like you're retiring early even if you aren't going to, but what if you want to retire early? So Buddy says, hey, I'm quite ready to retire, but I won't be old enough for Medicare for another 6 months. Should I just stick it out until then? Well, first off, it's okay that you're quite ready to retire, and why is Buddy, right, talking about this? Medicare, you can't start, you can't get started on Medicare until age 65. And the reason for the thought process here is it okay or should I stick it out, is because paying for health insurance on your own, especially in your 60s, can be very expensive. Going out to get insurance in the private network, paying for it on your own is very expensive. Now, if Buddy here is at a company that is supplementing a portion of his health insurance costs, then that helps out, right? He's not paying the full bill. He's just paying what he owes. Now, one thing to think about is that if you leave your company, you do have that ability to get COBRA, which is continuation of your work insurance. However, just know that you're going to have to pay not only your portion, but now you're also going to be responsible for the portion that the company was paying on your behalf. So back to Buddy's question, should I stick it out until I actually hit age 65? And I would say it depends. Why does it depend? Well, the first thing I'm going to say is, Buddy, have you saved enough? And, I work with a lot of clients that have retired early based on what they have in their retirement savings plus other savings. This is not an issue. As we do the plan, as we work out the plan, we put extra health insurance cost in their plan for retiring early, whether it's 6 months early, whether it's a couple years before age 65, whether it's age 60 and they've got to go out and get health insurance for 5 years or longer. Have you looked at this as part of your plan? So, and then what do we do, right, if you do retire early? So if you've saved enough, then you're going to do what's called bridge the gap. Kind of think about yourself crossing over a bridge here. You're on one side of the bridge where you're going to have to pay health insurance, and from a time frame to when you get to the other side of the bridge, age 65, where you can then get on Medicare. And so we've got to put a bridge between that gap, which is typically taking withdrawals from your retirement savings or your retirement portfolio. So now, if you've saved enough, we're just going to take those withdrawals, right? So I think let's now put this in numbers. It might help you actually just kind of look at this a little more, because Buddy here, right? Buddy's only talking about 6 months. So let's just say the cost for health insurance is $1,000 a month. You're going to have to pay it for those 6 months. So $1,000 times 6. When you look at your total picture, is that $6,000 going to ruin your plan? Is it going to hurt your future income or your future plan? If not, you know what? If you're emotionally ready to retire, which I get it, I've worked with people who said, I'm just exhausted at work, I'm ready to be done, then you know what, buddy? Take the leap. If that $6,000 or whatever that cost of insurance is isn't going to impact your total picture, take the leap and head into retirement and enjoy it, because there's no sense in stressing out for another 6 months just over that $6,000. Now, again, hopefully people can take this, utilize it if you're thinking about retiring early, whether it be age 60, 62, 64. Go and get some quotes for health insurance and take those quotes, multiply it out by the number of years that you want to retire early, and start putting that into your plan. Is that a feasible thing for you to do? like I mentioned, we work with clients and where we're helping them, we quote that out, and then we put that in that plan, and we understand, can we bridge the gap? Meaning, can we take, whether they've got a pension starting, or we determine how we're going to phase in Social Security, or if it's just going to the retirement savings in the investment portfolio. Does the plan have the ability to support that bridge, to support bridging the gap from where you're at today to when you can start on Medicare? So great question, buddy. I know a lot of people have that same question. I have a lot of folks that say, well, I'm just going to wait till retire till age 65. But when we really, really dive deep into it, they'd love to retire at age 63 or 62 or 60 or in their 50s. And you can do it. Just make sure that you've got enough saved up to do so. You've got a plan in place to bridge that gap. Thanks for submitting the question. Here we go. Question number two of the day is from Ruth. Ruth says, there's no way I'm going to spend through my savings during my life, so I'll end up leaving a lot to my kids. But they'll probably be in their 40s or 50s when that happens. I feel like they could use the money more now while they're in their 20s and 30s to help with things like student loan payoff and home purchases. Should I start giving the money away to them now? Ruth, this is a really good question. I'm starting to see this more and more. So it already sounds like Ruth is very good with her money, right? She knows that she's going to be able to live through her retirement. She's saved up enough, lives within her means, is not going to withdraw at all, and says, hey, I know there's going to be extra. Should I start supporting others now, today, while they're younger, helping them build wealth and helping their overall financial future? As I mentioned, I'm starting to see this more and more and more in regards to the clients that we're helping and supporting and what they're looking to do for their kids or their grandkids or for charities. And here's a few things to go through. Let's just say you're not like Ruth. You're not really sure if you're going to have some left over or not. First thing that you want to do, and that Ruth should do as well, sounds like she's maybe already done it, is verify your plan. So think about this. It's like going on a car trip. You know, you're going to go from point A to point B. You know, not a multi-day trip. Just kind of imagine this. You're going on a few-hour trip, going from point A to point B. Do you know that you're going to have enough fuel to get to point B? And that's what Ruth's saying, right? Like, hey, I not only know that I'm going to have enough fuel, enough retirement savings to get to point B, I'm going to have extra fuel once I get there. I'm still going to have 3/4 of a tank left. Make sure, just a kind of a recap for Ruth, but if you're thinking about doing the same thing, make sure, put together that plan. This is what we do for our clients, is we put together a plan, an income plan, an investment strategy plan that says, okay, here's what we're forecasting through age, depends on what folks look at, but a lot of times we look at through age 95, and then at age 95, here's how much fuel could be potentially left in the tank. And then, yes, it's definitely okay to help them now. I'm guessing that we can all look back in life and wish we would have done some things differently, or wish we would have had some help, right? Or, boy, we wouldn't have carried maybe student loan debt, or you wouldn't have carried so much mortgage debt or credit card debt, or, all of these things that were hindering our ability to build wealth in our past, things that were hindering that. We wish we would have done that, maybe not differently, but boy, it would have really changed our trajectory if we didn't have that, I'll call it debt or loan in our life. And so I think Ruth's heading down a great path here. I would say, yes, you can start giving that money away to them now. Now, be careful on a few things here, Ruth. One of the things to know is that what you're able to do, the current gifting rules, is that you can give $15,000 away each and every year without being subject to any sort of estate taxes or gifting taxes or taxes. So each of us have the ability to give $15,000 away per individual each and every year. And you can just do that. You can give it away, you can write them a check, and you don't have to turn it in on the taxes or anything like that. Now, of course, with all of this, got to tell you, make sure you talk to a qualified tax professional, but here's some guidance in what we feel that you're able to do. So that means, let's just say you've got a daughter and your daughter's married. Not only can you give $15,000 to your daughter, you can give $15,000 to your daughter's spouse. And let's say they've got a kid, your grandkid. Now you can give also $15,000 away to your grandchild. So one of the things is just handing them, a check. Another way to think about it, and here's what I would challenge you with, Ruth, and, just kind of challenge everyone, is not only challenge you, but challenging you to challenge your kids or your grandkids. Use this as a process to help them learn about money. Just handing them a $15,000 check, if they're financially responsible, I'm sure that they'll use it in the right way. If you're not certain if they're financially responsible, then you might want to be not only gifting them this money, but making certain it's going towards a specific goal, like you've listed here, helping pay off student loans, helping pay off a mortgage, helping and making sure that it's going to a specific goal that will help them and help put them on the right path for their financial future, and helping them build wealth over the long term, right? Whether that's through real estate or reducing debt. Just a quick story here. We working with a client. One of the things that was important to them is that they wanted to make sure that their grandson goes through college and graduates from college without any sort of student loan debt, right? Just like Ruth said, think about that. I mean, they're really putting their grandson on the right trajectory, that when he graduates from college, and you hear it out there right now, right? There's kids with hundreds and thousands of dollars of student loan debt. They'll be paying off those bills for a long time. It's almost like they're just trying, right? They're just clawing and scratching to get out of that hole. And by this client thinking like this, they're putting their grandson in a position that when he graduates college, he doesn't have that hole, right? So he's got this ability to now grow and build his wealth faster. And so one of the things that we looked at is actually the ability to, what they did was put directly into a 529 plan for their grandson. The other thing that we thought about is that not only did we help them think about and put into that 529 plan, but instead of putting in $100 a month and another $100 a month or another $1,000 a month and just doing it through the grandson's, I'll say early years, right? Doing it over 18 years or 10 years or whatever, 15 years. Instead, we said, hey, let's take advantage of the power of compounding. And they had the ability to do this. What we did is we helped them put a lump sum in that 529 plan up front. Again, now there's some tax rules around all of this. You want to work with your tax professional as well, but you're able to do multiple years worth of gifting into a 529 plan. Now by getting that lump sum in there, you're taking advantage of the power of compounding, and that lump sum will compound. And not only the power of the compounding, the power of the tax deferral. I'm going into the weeds here, but as you can see, there's a lot of thought processes that can go into not only just, can you gift? Yep, sure. Does it help? Yes, sure. But then how you want to do it as well. Ruth, great question. Absolutely, you can start giving them money as long as you verified your plan. Just like I said, challenge yourself to how do you make this a learning lesson, or how do you utilize this to help teach them about money and make sure that they're also heading down the right track for their future. All right, next on the docket, here we go. AJ has question number 3. AJ says, I have 7 different IRAs, all at different investment companies. It's gotten to be a lot to keep up with, I bet. I would agree with that. But I like the idea of being diversified like this. That's a good idea, right? Well, AJ, I'm just going to give you the straightforward answer. Actually, no, it doesn't mean that you're diversified by having your funds, your investments in 7 different locations. First off, we're going to talk about 2 points in this. Diversification and just management of all of this. So first off, let's start with diversification. Imagine this, AJ. Imagine in these 7 different locations and all of these different IRAs, what if all of them owned Netflix? So you could have your money in 7 different locations, but all of those locations could own the same stock. And during COVID, you're probably like, wow, right? Wow, my accounts went up sky high. But now what you're seeing, because we're in the middle of 2022 here, Netflix has taken some pretty big losses. And so then all of your accounts would drop the same. Now, what you might be thinking is, AJ, is, well, hey, I can look at the accounts. I don't have an individual stock in there. And actually, I looked at my accounts, and they all have different funds. But see, here's the deal. Funds are collections of stocks or potentially bonds, but that's what a fund is. Let's just say we're using a mutual fund or there's ETFs in your accounts. Those funds are a collection of individual stocks or bonds. So while you might have different funds, if they're all growth funds, then you could potentially still be owning all of the same stocks in those different IRAs. So first off, what I would recommend is consolidating all of those IRAs into one IRA. That's called a rollover. It's a non-taxable event. We help clients do this each and every day, where you're going to take and consolidate your accounts into one account. And then in that one account is where you want to make sure that you're diversified. Do you have your large cap stocks? Do you have your mid cap? Do you have your small cap? And then on the bond side, are you diversified on the bond side if you do need bonds in your portfolio? So, and then there's large cap growth, there's large cap value, there's mid cap growth, right? Oh, don't forget about international. Do you want some commodities in there? So you can have all of this in one account, and then in that account, you want to make sure that that is where your diversification takes place through the different funds that you own, and then those funds, right, are going to be a collection of different stocks or bonds. Now, the second part to your question here is from a management standpoint. Now, just like you mentioned, it's gotten to be a lot to keep up with. I see the same from folks that come in to sit down and meet with us that had their accounts all over the place. First off, they're not even sure if they're hitting the targets that they need to be hitting, right? Let's just say you're 10 years away from retirement. It becomes really tough to keep up with, to understand, are you hitting the targets that you need to be hitting from a retirement timeline perspective, getting the growth that you need to get to be able to retire on the time frame that you're hoping to retire. But now let's just say that you're within 5 years of retirement, you're retiring this year, or you're already retired. What I also see from folks that have their accounts scattered all over the place is it's just this, like you had mentioned, a lot to keep up with in this mind game of, well, okay, I've got this account over here with Johnny. I think this one's my growth one. I've got some over here with Susie, and some of that's being kind of conservative. You know, it's really, do you have the mix that you need to have? Or are you sure that you're going to be able to keep up with inflation? And then taking money out of those accounts. I find a lot of people are confused. Well, which account do they take out of and when do they take out of it? Versus consolidating your accounts to one location so you can make a very clear plan in regards to how much you need on the growth side, how much you need in your war chest and that bond fund side, how much you can clearly take out of the account, and being able to watch that account and understand, are you keeping pace with inflation and cost of goods going up? One other thing that I find sometimes becomes difficult is that, you know, maybe you've got accounts in different locations because, you know, you had kind of this friendship with Johnny, or Susie was a friend of a friend, and so you're like, boy, I feel really bad moving my accounts and consolidating to one location. Here's what I'll say. I want you to think about this. Emotion versus logic. Emotion versus logic. And I find sometimes people can get so emotionally tied to their banker or to their broker or to their stock or to a certain fund or to their company stock that they're not doing what's logically right for them. So AJ, do what's logically right for yourself. Get all of these into one location like you can, or a couple locations if that's for some reason what makes you feel better. But get everything into, start consolidating, and then just make sure that the funds inside your accounts are diversified towards your goals. Hope that helps you out, or anybody that's listening that's got accounts in multiple locations. Hopefully it makes you think a little bit differently about having all of those accounts in different locations. The different locations does not mean you're diversified. It's what you own in those locations, and does that align with your targets and your goals? Whether you're growing your money to hit a retirement date, does the funds in those locations align with that? Or if you're retired, or you're approaching retirement, do you have that proper growth and war chest balance to make sure that you're able to live that lifestyle that you need to live in retirement? Okay, here we go. Our fourth and final question is from Patsy. Patsy says, my mom and dad both needed nursing home care in their late years, so I'm really worried about needing it myself. I'm 63, and long-term care insurance seems really expensive at this age. But should I go ahead and get it for my comfort, if nothing else? First off, let's talk about why Patsy might be worried. Well, she mentioned both her mom and dad needed nursing home care. So if Patsy's health were to go downhill, she might be unable to do those normal activities, right? She might need help. She might need help getting dressed. She might need help, with dinner. She might need help going to the bathroom. She just might need help with everyday activities, and she wants to make sure that she gets good help. Or maybe Patty's worried because she wants to make sure instead of going to a nursing home, she wants to stay at home when she does need this help. And I'm guessing the other part of the worry here is that if she does need these different types of help, that she understands after watching both her mom and dad need it, that the cost of care, the cost of long-term care insurance, the cost of home care insurance or assisted living insurance, the cost of all these different types of care can be really, really expensive. And let me just clarify something for everybody here. Medicare does not cover long-term care insurance. Medicare does not cover an assisted living facility. Medicare does not cover your home health assistance that you might need. So I can see why Patsy here might be worried. Both of her parents needed care. That's what usually starts clicking the emotions in our minds that, boy, after going through it with a parent or seeing a grandparent go through it, we finally recognize we don't want to go through this ourselves. So what can Patsy do? Well, one thing she could do is just to decide to self-insure. That's what she's currently doing, meaning what self-insure is that if you were to need home health care or assisted living or nursing home, it means you're going to pay the bill yourself. Now, nursing home costs could be anywhere from $70,000 a year to $90,000 a year, and I've heard people say upwards of $100,000 a year or more. Hearing those costs, I'm guessing you can understand why Patsy is worried about this. Looking at what you've saved up for retirement, think about how quickly it could start depleting at $100,000 a year, another $100,000 a year, another $100,000 a year. Home health care, full-time, I've seen anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 a year. Assisted living facilities, same, probably $50,000 to $80,000 a year. Just giving you ranges again. Check, with facilities in your area to get a good estimate. But you can see by these expenses how costly this can get and how quickly your assets can disappear by paying for it. So, number one, you can self-insure, taking from your money to pay for this. Or number two is transfer the risk. And I get it, Patsy, but it's kind of like car insurance. It's kind of similar to home insurance. We get the insurance. We hope we don't have to use it. But if it's there, we've got it, and it's going to help us out. So what Patsy can do is she can transfer the risk to a long-term care insurance company. Now, there's a lot of different types of plans out there. We can do that in a whole separate episode. There's traditional long-term care plans. There's hybrid long-term care plans. So traditional is kind of use it or lose it. Hybrid is there's a death benefit associated with it. But by having this in place now, right, let's just say that $90,000 bill comes in for a nursing home. Well, maybe Patsy is transferred 50% of the risk, right? So she's transferred $45,000 of that nursing home bill over to the insurance company. They're going to pay the $45,000, and then Patsy might be responsible for the remainder. Maybe she's transferred all $90,000, so she doesn't have to take a dime out of her retirement savings. So back to Patsy's question, should I go ahead and get it for my comfort, if nothing else? Well, yes. Does it provide comfort? It will help and provide comfort if that's what you're looking for. But I think, you just have to look at your overall plan, Patsy. And here's what the process that we go through with clients is first we put together their income and investment plan. We understand what kind of lifestyle that they can live based on the retirement savings that they have today. How much can they withdraw from that plan? Then after that, we're going to start solving for long-term care insurance. Another thing to think about is maybe you just want to protect your assets. Maybe it's important to you that you don't see your assets deplete and that you'd rather, instead of paying them all in nursing home costs, that you'd rather make sure that they pass on to your kids or to your grandkids. In that case, it's a good idea to get long-term care insurance. But I've also had it, where I've had folks come in and they didn't have any children. They were single. Once we ran all of the plan for them and ran the projections on their overall plan, showed them kind of, hey, here's kind of where you're projecting towards, at the end of life. And they said, okay, there's that much left in their bucket of money. They've made that decision that, you know what, I'm okay. I don't need long-term care insurance. I'll use what's left to help pay for that nursing home insurance if I need it. So one more thing to think about, if Patsy is married, she did say, hey, I've got, my mom and dad, and maybe she experienced this with her mom and dad. A lot of times what I find is that people will say, oh, this isn't going to affect me anywhere, even though the statistics are like somewhere around 70% of people need long-term care insurance all the time. People go, nope, not going to happen to me. And it ends up, right, they decide, well, we're not going to do anything about it. Then the first spouse goes into a nursing home at that $100,000 a year cost, or whatever it might be in your area, running down a whole lot of their overall funds. That first spouse passes away, leaving the second spouse with little to nothing to live their life on. So when it comes to long-term care, what have you done to protect yourself so you can get the best help that you want to get? What have you done to protect your assets, if that's important to you? And if you're married, what have you done to protect your spouse in regards to this? Patsy, the last tidbit of information I want to give you here is that the best time to do something about it is when you're youngest and healthiest, because with long-term care, there is an application process, and there are certain health things where you may no longer qualify to be able to get covered by a long-term care plan. So think about it when you're youngest and healthiest. I see a lot of people in their early 60s, that's when they really start to explore it and take action on it. At 63, I think you're a great age to start exploring with it. This is part of our conversation of, in our Retirement 360 Blueprint process with our clients to make sure that we're having that discussion in their overall plan, seeing if it is or is not a fit for them in their future. To Patsy and everybody else, we thank you for your questions. If you'd like to submit a question for us to answer on the podcast here, go to lifemoneyshow.com. Again, lifemoneyshow.com. You'll see, if you click on the show notes, you'll see on the side there that there's an area to submit your questions. Also, while you're there, and if you found the podcast to be of value and benefit, we've got a lot of other great information that we provide in weekly emails to help you build wealth. And as you know, one of my focuses is helping my clients reduce their long-term tax picture, keeping more money in your pocket versus giving it to the IRS in taxes. So go to lifemoneyshow.com, sign up for our newsletter. Just go to lifemoneyshow.com, scroll down, you'll see where it says join my insiders list. Just put in your name and your email address and we'll add you to the list, and you'll be getting our weekly newsletter to help you build wealth and reduce your long-term tax picture. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget, subscribe on your favorite podcast player. I look forward to our next conversation to continue to help you live life today and be financially confident about your tomorrow. Have a great one.
Sierens Financial Group is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Sierens Financial Group, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Sierens Financial Group, Inc. is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Sierens Financial Group, Inc.